Hello, everybody. Welcome you all. I'm glad to be here and represent for you the Hungarian Jeremie program, especially the venture capital results. When I was listening to, as far as I remember, Oli was the Swedish gentleman representing the Swedish seed capital funds, I was a bit surprised. This is a different world, and they wait. And a joke came to my mind. I don't know what it is now. I won't bore you. Two snails are standing at the side of the road, and they're talking. They're looking over. Hey, have you ever been over there? Are you crazy? You have to be born there. So maybe Sweden is something different, Central Europe or even Hungary. A classical fundraising regarding seed capital is nearly impossible in Hungary. Regarding that Swedish central budget closes in the last, 10 or 15 years with deficit, they have pluses, they need to decide, the state need to decide what to invest in. Regarding the majority of the EU countries, especially in Central Europe, we have different problems. We are just managing the debt crisis. I think market rollers do not differ too much from that. So the financing climate, the business climate, the financing culture differs a lot, just like here in Sweden. But I was very happy to see that more than 10 seed funds can be raised within 2 years. It's a big deal. In Hungary, we also have seed funds. I cannot say that we did not do our best, but without EU money and without ERDF sources, it would have been impossible to do. First of all, I would like to introduce you some of the aspects of SMEs and venture capital, just to see the background of the market in Hungary. In case of SMEs, more than 3/4 of the SMEs need to operate without loans or credits because they are just not bank ready, and banks do not accept them as partners to be financed. SME is unable to involve loans because of the micro size. In Hungary, 99.9% of the enterprises are SME, and out of this nearly 100% number, 80% of the SMEs are micro companies. So there are a big number of companies, but mainly micro companies, which is not really fitting the investment policy and the finance policy of Hungarian banks. The interest rate at the moment is still high in Hungary. In case of loans, it's 6 and 12%, though the basic rate of the Hungarian basic rate is 2.4 or something like that, so it's not really high. But the risk of the SME financing, just like you see, it 3 or 4 times higher interest rates, indicates 3 or 4 times higher interest rates. Other problem is the lack of the collaterals, so it's very hard to get properties and to give properties to be a collateral for banks. And regarding venture capital market, before the Jeremie program, an absolute minority of the SMEs could be a partner of venture capital funds, and only low number of investments has occurred in Hungary. It was 20 or 40 deals per year, and mainly buyouts or M&A transactions, so it was not a core business of venture capital investment. The average size of venture capital investments were, regarding the M&As, 15 and 20 million euros, but not typical and absolutely not for SMEs. Yes. Regarding the loans, the 2 high additional costs also block the SMEs to get into the loans, and only 13% of the SME possess financial guarantees in Hungary. It's a very low number, I think. In case of venture capital, that was a big deformity in the market. Hungary had, and I think still have, a really underdeveloped venture capital market. There is a huge market gap in early stage and seed financing at the moment still. And only state-owned investors had invested into Hungarian SMEs maximum 1.5 million euros. But basically 200,000 or 300,000 euros were invested into SMEs, which is not enough to make an internationally successful story or project. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, the Jeremie program has changed the SME financing circumstances in Hungary, and the Jeremie program was launched a bit late. It was 2008 and 2009. After 3 years with the budget period, within the budget period, and private equity market had a chance to develop in venture capital programs. The program has 3 basic fields, just like you have also showed us in your presentation about the Jeremie program, so I don't want to repeat it in details. So micro and small credit program, a portfolio guarantee program, and a venture capital program. All in all, in the Hungarian Jeremie program, we indicated more than 800 million euro for these 3 actions. At present, we have covered 85% of these sources, and as you know, we have to invest and have to use these sources till the end of the next year. So we have 1.5 years to fulfill 100%. The basic idea was that revolving financial instruments and revolving funds should be used. We would like to see the rest or the majority of the money back in our shelter when we finish these programs. And at the moment, nearly 18,000 SMEs and beneficiaries could have a partner of one of these financial instruments. This is the structure of Hungarian SME program. Maybe it's not so surprising, it's nearly the same in every EU countries. What is really important for us, that Hungarian government believed that the financial intermediaries should provide a big number of applicants. We diversified the programs, the loan program, guarantee, and venture capital programs into different financial intermediaries who transferred the money into the SMEs. I have to say that the most successful intermediaries, financial intermediaries, made a mixture and a combined version of different financial instruments. I myself work for a venture capital company who was successful at a tender for the venture capital program, and it was also successful for the microcredit program. And if there is a partner of us and he comes to finance, we can provide venture capital and we can provide loans at the same time. I think this is also a market gap, that we need to share our risk, but we don't need to share our profits with a bank. If you let a bank into a financing, the bank wants collaterals, and then if you liquidate your target company, if there is a problem and it's not a successful investment, then the bank takes everything and you have nothing as an investor. So that's why we made a combined version like this. The performance of the Hungarian Jeremie program till the end of the last year, you can see the contracted sources. It sharply increased in the last 3 years, and I think we can fulfill our investment strategy till the end of the next year. Let me mention some significant stories about the venture capital program. As I've mentioned, it was started and launched in 2009. Two kind of funds were co-invested with private sectors. This is a joint fund and a co-investment fund. I need to emphasize that Hungary's capital, Budapest, and its surroundings is not under Objective 1, so it was just a phasing out position in the last 4 years, and only co-investment funds is allowed in Budapest. All over in the other 6 regions in Hungary, joint funds are available for SMEs. Every fund operates nationwide, so it's not just regional funds, they are all nationwide funds. Basically, the funds have to invest into startups and seed capital into SMEs. At least 25% of the SMEs in the project have to be absolutely innovative project. But if you wanted to win the tender for venture capital, you have to burden even 50% or 75% of innovative projects. So I can say that in the forehead of the program we can find the innovation, and we have invested in many innovative companies, and there are some funds where out of the 10, 9 is innovative investment and only 1 is a classical. I need to emphasize that the funds which were built up from the fund of fund, and the reimbursement is 70%, and the investors' private contribution is at least 30%, is very successful. Nearly double time application came for the tenders, and out of the 16 applicants, the authority have chosen 8 fund manager companies. In case of the tender, the investor, the private investor, or the person of the private investor and the fund manager is not nearly the same, or not nearly the same interest line. So it may differ. For example, in my case, I have established a fund manager company in 2008. And we tried to make any fundraising, classical fundraising. It was not really successful, and we have seen the tender of the venture capital program in the Jeremie programming, and the biggest bank of Hungary has been an investor. But the management authority was different for 1 or 2 years. But the truth is that afterwards the bank bought out our shares, so it became the venture company fund manager, also the bank's subsidiary at the moment. The potential enterprises are LTDs or PLCs. It's very important that they are registered in Hungary. They are not older than 5 years, and they cannot exceed the annual turnover of 5 billion Hungarian forints. It's approximately 1.5 million euros. Investment per target company cannot exceed 2.5 million euros, but it's not typical. Later you will see that 1.2 million euro is the typical measure of the investment. Later on, 3 years later, in 2012 and 2013, a seed and growth capital program was also launched in 3 details, and the seed sub-program was allocated into 20 million euros, and 4 funds and 4 fund managers were raised to achieve it. I was the consultant of fund managers who were successful in the growth fund, and they were successful in the seed fund as well. I mean, they have won the tender, But when we were building the fund's strategy, I had to say them that if they can liquidate the seed fund without loss, they are really talented and very happy. So it's a big risky to make seed capital in Hungary, and I think it's very easy to lose money. You can see the potential target enterprises. What is the most spectacular that they cannot use more than 300 euros per company, so it's really a small amount. And what's more, the first half of the investment can be given as an investment, the other part as a loan. Well, we didn't know why was it so, but it's a rule for us, so a combined version should be provided into SMEs in case of seed program. In case of growth program, much higher capital and much higher resources were provided. It's 175 million euros, and altogether in this turn, 16 fund managers and 16 funds had been raised. The target companies are very similar to the others. The difference is that innovation is also in the forehead of the program, and the typical investment is over 2 million euros. So when we are thinking about the measure of investment to one certain target company, it's really on the increase at the moment. Let's see the venture capital program results at the end of the last year. Hungarian initiative was a kind of pioneer in the Jeremie programming in 2008, establishing, expanding the former venture capital activity in Hungary. We cannot deny it. It was 4 or 5 times higher investment in the Hungarian SMEs than before. Altogether, the number of funds, you can see the joint seed fund and the co-investment fund, and the total budget is quite big in my opinion. It's over 350 euros altogether, and at least the 80% of these sums have to be invested directly into SMEs. You can ask what is the rest. You know, the rest is the management fee, additional costs, management, and other costs of the fund and the fund manager. The number of investment decisions made by the end of the last year was 170, and more than 200 million euros have been invested yet. You can see the average amount of investment in the beginning of the program. Now I've mentioned it's on the increase, so it's approaching 2 million euros per target company. What is, I think, very important when you're planning a venture capital program sorry, is the sectoral preferences, the scope of investment. And it's very hard to build a good fund, to build a good portfolio within one certain country if it's just like Hungary, 10 million persons. Our GDP is just at the moment ongoing, but before it was negative. And it's very risky to build a portfolio within a country. That's why I saw that in the Lithuanian example, Baltic countries came together, and this is the market measure for a investor. 3 countries, 4 countries together, maybe similar conditions, similar risk, similar potentials. But the Jeremie program financed Hungarian state programs, so that's why we try to do our best in this case. There are dominant sectors in the investment policy, and this is IT and biotechnology. I myself do not believe in the IT. Maybe it's my fault. I think it's too global. Very hard to see the potentials and very hard to see the competitors of a certain project, and it's very easy to invest into a project and 1 year later it turns out that somebody has just went through the line and we are just lagging behind. The first success stories have improved. One of my former investment company, the portfolio has invested into a cryo innovation. project, and this was the first exit in the microcredit program, and all in all 4 exits has happened by now. The international comparison, if we see that the rate of classical venture capital investment is very astonishing, that Hungary is the biggest in this scale. This is absolutely just because of the Jeremie program and the venture capital program. We have invested a big vast of money into this programming, though the government and the market actors knew that it's a risky way and no one knows how much we can get back after liquidating the funds. Some numbers about our activities. Up to now, the deal flow was very high in the Hungarian Jeremie venture capital program. It's only the data of the venture capital program. More than 5,000 projects were looked over. So-called due diligence was made with them. And out of them, 6% of the projects had an investment offer, a so-called term sheet. And out of that, 1/3 of these offers were fulfilled and realized by a investment transaction. The size of portfolio, regarding the size of portfolio and regarding the number of investments, you can see that absolute overruling of micro size enterprises can be seen, and it was very, very untypical that they invested into medium companies, though the growing program would have provided money for that. That's why we can say that project companies came for investment and not classical companies came to us. There are some further challenges in the venture capital market in Hungary, and the biggest problem in Hungary, and I think it's maybe nearly typical all over Europe, that there are many projects, there are many SMEs, but very few is investments ready at the same time. And it's not really developing in Hungary. So when we launched the program, everybody invested in everything. Everything was attractive. Everything was seemed very profitable. And when they closed the first year, everybody used a handbrake and said that a bit slow down and look over 2 or 3 times what you invest in, because the portfolio was not so strong as we expected it. And that is the big problem, that the process of investment development and the way from a businessman to fulfilling an investment, it takes 3 or 6 months. I think it's too long for SMEs and it's too long for the market. But the problem is that the quality of the business plans are very poor. The problem is that micro companies are basically family companies or just fellow companies, and it's very hard for them to cooperate with investors. The other problem is that a scientist is not a manager. An innovator is not a manager. An owner is not a manager, and they do not accept that we invest into the management and not only into the project. So the biggest risk is, if you have a good project with a poor management, you will probably lose your money. All in all, I think we have to give technical assistance to SMEs, and we evidently see a financial gap in SME market all over Europe. But otherwise, there is an information and quality gap as well, and we need to raise money not only just to invest into SMEs, but to make them ready to be invested in. If I think about the program results by now, I think the program success can be measured on one part, that 2 or 3 times applicants, private investors, came to be a part of the Jeremie program, and only 1/3 could win money. It means that private sector and private money has moved when they saw that they have an evident additional money They put one part, and two parts is put into the venture capital fund by the EU. There is a very important legislation in Hungary. If you close the venture capital fund and if you make a 10% loss, then the 10% loss is just burdened by the EU. The private investor get back all their money in nominal amount. If you have a profit, an extra profit, for example, 30% profit after liquidating your fund, then the EU takes only 5% of the profit, and you can take home 25% of the profit. So this loss and profit legislation in Hungary made this program very, very attractive. That's why there was a standing in a queue, and everybody wanted to have a venture capital fund with EU grants or EU sources. That's why I think the process of investment is very good. I think by the end of this year, till the middle of the next year, we will fulfill the complete investment strategy, and 100% of the investable money will be invested in life. So thank you for your attention. Hope I haven't been too long as the last one. And if you have any question, I will be happy to answer.